Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, October the 17th, 2022. We only have the one item on the agenda this evening. The other item had to be withdrawn due to the some changes within the development plan that were going to be presented to us. So they were somewhat unprepared to bring that scope of the plan to us tonight. So tonight we just have the one item on here for the 2022-2023 snow plan. And I will turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. And I will turn it over immediately to Mr. Krass.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I want to introduce, for those of you that don't know, Steve Welch is my Assistant Director of Operations. He is pretty much the field marshal during snow season. He runs the crews, does all of the prep work. We do have, as we said, we do have a little snow intel. We do have the keys for the truck if anyone does want to go in there and climb up. Climb up into it. It's really, the reason we brought it up is if it had been warmer, just to give everyone kind of a feel for the lack of visibility that the drivers have in the trucks. I think it's, yes, they're big, but once you're behind the windshield, you don't see the snow plow, you don't see the edges of the snow plow, and then it gets compounded when there's snow and ice on the windshield. So that's why we wanted to bring that up. Seriously, if anybody wants to, we can open up. If not, I'll just move into my presentation. I'll leave it up to council.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Didn't you have a video last year that you put out that kind of showed that?
The blind spot video, it's still there, and we'll be putting.
Okay.
It's on the web page, and we'll be putting that.
That was very
back
helpful. Thanks for doing that.
It's still there, and we'll get, as we get closer, Melissa will be putting that out on the Facebook page. So. Kind of wanted to change things up. In the past few years, I've kind of gone through the snow plan and thought this year we'd kind of get a little deeper into our preparations for various events. Really, snow season for us starts almost right after Labor Day. That's when we'll start prepping equipment, making sure everything is still working. Crews are checking their routes for low-hanging branches, any issues with the roads, and we'll start addressing those. Late September to early October, we'll start testing the operations of the equipment. In fact, we had to tear down 3 of the hydraulic systems in the dump trucks because they had kind of gummed up over time. And then we'll be calibrating the spreaders to make sure we're putting it out, able to put down at the proper rate. We'll be looking at the GPS that we use for the progress map, make sure there aren't any glitches with that. We'll be working with Development Services to update the snow route map for new subdivisions. This Friday, we have our annual crew meeting where we'll be going over routes and manpower and crew assignments with the crew. So that's pretty much what we're doing now. So as we get a little closer to an event, we actually start about 7 days out is when we'll typically Gary Lezak will be on the phone, on the TV, screaming there's a blizzard, watch models, and those type of things. But that's about when we get our attention, and we'll start looking for what the weather patterns are. And then it kind of narrows down. I mean, 7 days out, you get a picture of it's going to be somewhere in the Midwest. And that kind of continues till we're about 3 days out, and then that's when we'll start having discussions of what are we going to do for. Are we going to pre-treat? How are we going to pre-treat? What type of precipitation we are anticipating? Seems lately, in a lot of the snow plowing, when we talk about generalities, we're talking about a snow event and that. But lately, we seem to be in a cycle where we're right on the freeze line, where we're getting rain, then transitioning to sleet, then transitioning to snow, and that really needs a different type of attack. And we'll go out and we'll put brine down on some of the major roads just to give folks a heads up that something's coming. But really, best practice is to use solid material when that's happening. And so what we'll do is, again, depending on timing, is because pavement temperatures lag behind air temperatures quite a bit, we have quite a window where the roads are damp and we can put down salt. For example, today at 5 o'clock, air temperature was 40 degrees and pavement temperature was about 70. And so even when we're tanking, it takes a long time for that pavement mass to cool down to where it's below below freezing. So we'll be looking at that. It takes us about 3 hours to salt the entire town. So we have quite a window when we pull the trigger on that. So we are as the storm is rolling in, we're looking at precipitation types and pavement temps. I mean, when they're talking about amounts of snow, really we can tackle anything up to about a 6-inch event easily. After that, it kind of taxes and just stretches out how long it takes us to clear things. As far as equipment goes, we have 3 large dump trucks like you see out in the parking lot. We have 3 intermediate trucks, which are the smaller dump trucks, and then we have 3 pickup trucks. And so we divide those across 3 zones. And then we, as I said, every event is different, so we'll look at what do we need for manpower. We may only bring in a skeleton crew for the overnight hours and then load up on the day shift. As I said, we're kind of in a cycle where we're not only getting snow and sleet and rain and ice, but then temperatures tank on us. And our salt's only effective to about 18 degrees. And so what happens is we'll get into a period of time, maybe it's a couple of days, maybe it's a week, where we only have a window of about 4 hours a day to clear roads. So it really stretches out, but we'll push it until things lock up, then we'll have a crew on just watching for slick spots, and then we'll pick it up again the next day. So we have, within our system, we have 370 miles of road, 225 cul-de-sacs and dead ends. And cul-de-sacs, they take time, and so we've changed things a little bit. To fully clear a cul-de-sac takes us about 15 minutes. In that same period of time, we can plow about 5 to 6 to 8 miles of road in front of homes. So what we've changed to, and it was very effective last year, is we'll just make one pass around the cul-de-sac and leave the center. Folks can get in and out, and it lets us cover a lot of territory in a hurry. Want to share the actual route map that we use, if you don't mind passing that down.
Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Mr. Kraus,
Sure.
we don't allow cul-de-sacs like we did. They've got a medium in the middle.
They got a median in the middle.
How does that translate the 15 minutes to those? Is that?
Well, that's just a lot easier because we just make one pass. We can where we can, we pile snow in the middle and just go. So we get away from the complaints of, you've put all of the snow in my driveway, because on a lot of cul-de-sacs, there's about 2 feet in between driveways, or there's a fire hydrant or a mailbox or a parked car. And so that's really been able to get away from that, and just everyone gets a windrow just like any other residential. Yes. Well, even we even do that on the bubbles, without the old style, just the round ones. We still go once around and leave a little island. Yeah.
I have a real quick question. With the cul-de-sacs, so you give them a way out. Do you go back and do the center, like when you're done with everything else, or is that just kind of what we do? We get them in and out.
Most of the events, it just melts off in a couple of days. If we can get 15 degrees and sun, it'll melt itself off. So what you have before you is kind of the roadway network that we use, and this has pretty much been established to provide a clear or mostly clear transportation system. That's the red and orange routes for emergency vehicles, school buses, the traveling public. So while snow is falling, we focus on the red and orange routes. As conditions allow, the crews will move and break into the residential routes. If we get a lull where snow is not accumulating a lot on the red or orange routes, we'll move in and try to start clearing the other routes, or at least making some passes to reduce the accumulation. Once the snow stopped and these roads have been cleared, most folks, at the most, except for a few isolated cases, may have a snowpacked road that they have to drive on for about a quarter mile or less, and that gets them to to a clear route until we can get into the residential areas. Once the red and orange routes are cleared, the dump trucks will move into the through blue routes. We really don't want them backing up because of visibility, so we try and limit cul-de-sacs and dead ends and some of the other tighter areas to the smaller dump trucks and the pickup trucks. I think that's, and then moving into the communication plan, Melissa Harmer has been very active with us with a communication plan. We'll provide updates at shift change or as other conditions allow or require, or as we're moving, preparing for the events, and we have a snow desk that's open with the crews. We'll do Facebook posts. We have updates on the front page of the website, and we post a progress map. I was told I was limited to about 12 minutes by Mr. Burnock today. I do want
Take
to.
all the time you need, Mike.
I do really want to extend a ride along. We did have Mr. Westcoat a few years ago had an opportunity to do that. He spoke about it quite often. It really is telling to see what the folks have to deal with when they're plowing snow. I think that, Steve, I think I touched everything. Mr. Fearborn, anything you wanted me to address?
Changes this year, Mike. Specifically the night shift.
What we have done, as I said, what we'll do, depending on the event, is we will look at where we are, where our windows of opportunity is, and we may hold back most of the night shift. So we may just have 3 dump trucks in patrolling, checking for slick spots, addressing those type of things, so we can load up everybody during the day when we have the window to clear snow and move things off as much as we can. The other thing we are looking at is best practice when temperatures fall below the 20s and you're putting dry product down, you want to pre-wet it, and that kind of starts a catalyst type reaction. We've tried using our salt brine. Our salt brine is very good for pre-wetting. The problem is there's a lot of grit in it that gets hung up in our filters, in the pumps for the tanks that are on the side of the spreader. So we're going to be purchasing a calcium chloride. It helps us, and it also depresses the temperature that our salt will work at or start working at below 15 degrees. So you buy that in a bulk 300 or 400 gallon container, and then you put it in as they load salt, they'll top off their liquid tanks along the side of the spreaders.
As Mr. Kraus was indicating, the first panic button that we always get is when Gary Lezak gets on the air to let us know that the next snow Armageddon is coming. It is usually around that time that we actually have, and depending on the event and how it's transpiring, a group actually gets together and briefs before every single event, and we debrief after every single event. Group includes Ms. Harmer from a communications standpoint, Mr. Murdoch, myself. Tim Baldwin will now be a part of that group because it is a lot of these events do touch on emergency management issues. We have, not for Mike, and never had to declare an emergency event, or the mayor has never been called upon to declare an emergency event, but we always look at it from that standpoint too. And as you
Got
can,
close a couple of times.
been very close a couple of
Yeah, there's
times.
discussion.
We've actually had to ask some folks who've been very, very stubborn on some emergency snow routes, but we've been able to get to them informally and get them to move their vehicles. As you can imagine, when we have those briefings before the event, every single person sitting at the table suddenly becomes their own weatherman, and we're all experts on what it's going to be. I prefer that because it just used to be me and Mr. Krass arguing. And if you don't know, Mr. Krass is from Minnesota, so what I consider to be a major event, he kind of sometimes doesn't consider it to be as bad as I think it is. So.
Mr. Townsend, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions. I believe we have a snow map that kind of tracks the GPS routes of the trucks.
Yes, sir.
And did we have, I've seen other cities where they have, I don't know if our software has the capability in the future years to do so, where it records the plowing and stores it in the cloud. So if someone says, you never plowed my street, they kind of go back and look at the record and say, well, actually we did, or we couldn't because your car was there or something was in the way. I don't know if our technology.
We are a couple of things to that. We have that capability at what I'd refer to as the back of the house. This to an extent. The snow desk has the ability to look and see when trucks were down a given street. As far as the planometrics of plow up, plow down, that's a little bit more than what we need. What we are exploring, though, is and so we've got two maps. We've got the map that we put up for the public that says the road's been serviced, and that's the one that the public sees. Then we have the one that we can track with the snow desk that shows where the trucks are and where they've been down certain roads. We are looking at a software that Steve and I saw when we were in Charlotte at PWX. Is very similar to what we're using, but a little more sophisticated, where we can communicate directly with the crews. The snow desk can push issues out to an iPad that's in the truck. The drivers can't access it until they're stopped, but communication goes both ways. So if we tear up some sod, they can punch that into the laptop or into the iPad, send it back to the snow desk, and they can generate a work order. Or if the snow coming off the plow blade clips a mailbox, they can report that as well. If there's issues we get from the police department, slick spots, other things, that can be pushed out to the driver. So we're going to be doing another demo with that the end of the month here. We're going to have IT involved just because we rely on them heavily with the software integration for us, and just compare it to what we're currently using.
Outstanding. Thank you. I'm glad to hear you're able to get out and do those industry events to see best practices and come back with those ideas for us. And then the last question, what is the process to change the priority of routes? What would trigger a route to go from, say, a 4 to a 3 and 3 to a 2 and so on and so forth?
We look at it every year, because as we build new roads, we look at really what we want the red and orange routes to be is the through routes, and as I said, we kind of keep them such that we're about a block there. You don't have to drive more than a block in either direction. Thank you for bringing that up. This is not the updated map. We have the updated map, but we're working with Heather to get that updated for us and plot it, because we put a 6x6 map on the wall, and then the crews each have an 11x17 in the trucks for their routes. So this is last year's map. So there's quite a few roads that have been constructed that aren't shown on here right now.
All right. Excellent.
And do we have responsibility for many of them as well? Because I know Foxwood Springs is private, I know Shoto is private, but as Cooper Development said, back off on our brand new roads for this year, we'll take care of them or anything like that. They want us in there, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Just curious. Yeah, Kevin?
I am sure, if you don't, you might want to get a backup weatherman, because Mr. Lezak is retiring December 1st. He was my go-to guy, too, so I'm kind of disappointed with that.
I had another question. So you mentioned PWX. When you guys go to that show, and I know there's a million vendors there that you guys talk to, are there any new ones out there that are just getting started about any kind of new mixtures that they're pushing toward extending the capabilities of salt that we have? And are there any other liquid mixtures that are new that we're just not yet comfortable with? We'll let some other cities try it out first before we jump into it. I mean, I assume you guys see stuff like that.
We do, and there are some materials we'd love to use. Cargill has a product that we've had. What is it? Clear Lane. The problem, unlike our salt, that we've got a very good relationship with our suppliers. Cargill will bail. They did, and they'll bail on us, and they'll push product out to the DOTs. So, as much as we would like to use a product like that, really supply and reliability for the relatively small quantity that we use compared to the DOTs. Sometime in the future, would I like to have a salt dome with a stockpile of that? Yes, but Mr. Freeborn will also tell you I want a water tower in every corner too. So
Use a water tower a little more often.
So, but that, yes, Mayor, and that's why we are switching to, or looking at the calcium chloride for the pretreatment. Things like beet juice is great, except wasps like beet juice in the summer, and it leaches off of the salt when you pre-treat it. So there's pluses and minuses for everything. But yes, we do. We're constantly going. We've got one of our crew leaders going November 3rd to snow control and snow and ice control program that NPR is putting on. And Steve and Mike Donahoe, the night shift supervisor, just did some stuff through APWA. So yes, we are constantly looking for things that can
How far
improve.
away does our raw salt come from that we use? Is it mined fairly
It's
close?
mined it could be in Lyons, or it could come out of Michigan, depending on where their contract is, but the vast majority of it for us comes out of Lyons in Kansas.
Oh, okay.
Very reliable source. Some of the council may remember several years ago to the Cargill issue when we were still using Cargill, they just told us, we're not going to fulfill the contract,
Yeah, I
charge us
remember
what you want, and everything was going to DOT because they're the big shots in town. So they got all of that. They did actually say, if you can find a truck driver, there are truck drivers who can be bought to go out there, but you have to get them a little bit extra to get into the front of the line. I mean, it gets that cutthroat in bad winter events.
Ms. Burke?
I was going to say, we, in the scout troop here, we're right across the road, we've at least once spent the night in that salt mine, and it was a long night. But the tour was really cool, and I really enjoyed it, but sleeping there when all the adults were asleep and all the children were awake, I did not enjoy.
Did you have something, Vicki?
I did, thank you, sir. I just wanted to ask if the calcium chloride causes any faster deterioration on the curb work that we've been doing, or any of the streets.
Salt itself doesn't. Well, let me start with when we're applying a salt during a snow event, we're putting down between 100 to 100 on a snow event, between about 100 to 150 pounds per lane mile. That's about the equivalent of 4 or 5 gallon buckets. So we're not putting a lot of salt down on the roads. What is impacting the concrete is not the salt itself, it's that concrete is porous. And so water gets into the concrete, the salt makes the water a little bit wetter, but so then it's the freeze-thaw cycles that are really impacting the concrete. The curbs, really, it's related to freeze-thaw, but it's really the limestone aggregate that's in there. That the limestone aggregate that's in the curb that's deteriorating is very porous. It holds a lot of moisture. It doesn't bond real well with the concrete, and that's the issues we're having with the curb. And it's really a kind of beyond metro-wide. That whole curb issue stretches as far west as Lawrence, and almost every other city in the metro is suffering the same thing we are with the curb deterioration.
So one thing to add on your question about the salt is when if we would use the liquid calcium chloride, you would actually reduce your salt rate by 1/3 with the calcium sodium chloride. So that would actually end up being about the same, but it would actually take your product from being good from 18 degrees down to closer to -10 or -12. So there's kind of the benefit, but it's also going to cost more, because rock salt's cheaper than liquid calcium chloride. So And that was we kind of wanted to use that more on just strictly ice events because it would really melt off quicker. So it's just something to think about.
Anyone else? Yes, Sonia?
Thank you. So probably one of your favorite questions I know is cul-de-sacs, but the next in line one is probably the dead-end roads that aren't necessarily a cul-de-sac. And so that's something that just comes up lots of times in conversations with people is how are the dead-end roads prioritized? The request is, could the longer ones be done first because more people are affected than the shorter ones? And then secondly, is there anything we could do to help people on those roads if we're not going to be clearing them for a while? Like, is there something quick we could do to throw them a bone while they're waiting?
Well, I'd say, yeah, there is. I mean, we just need to identify if there's longer dead-end streets, as maybe, and a lot of times the guys, if they're out plowing and it's a lone stub street, they don't go priority 4 and turn around, go do the rest, and then come back. If they're there, they end up doing it because you'll waste more time having to come all the way back to get to that. It's more of those little stubs that's got maybe 2 houses off of it and they're running their loops and stuff, and then as they get back to it, then they'll kind of hit it. But the longer ones they generally try to hit fairly soon. But if you can identify some of those for us that maybe...
So I'm in Ward 4, so
Okay.
Sandpiper is a pretty long dead-end road that I hear people asking about frequently.
Okay.
And then to address the second part of your question, we do have kind of a two-tiered level of service. For the very large events, we'll reduce the amount of clearing we'll do on the multi-lane roads. We'll make sure that we have one clear lane, and then we'll start working into other areas where we may just make one pass to get, and then work our way around the network and then go back and start clearing. But that's a pretty crippling event where we would start doing that we're talking like a foot or more of snow. For the most part, I think on a normal event, it's maybe 3 shifts to get us clear.
Generally, once the snow, ice, whatever event
After it
is stops, we're usually, used to be about 12 hours, now we're about 14, 16 hours. We've usually hit about every street. So obviously, the more the snow, the more curb to curb, more attention we'll need. But that's general rule. Within 14, 18 hours, we should have the entire city plowed once precipitation stops.
Mike, what are the 2 that we've had, I'm sorry, sir. The 2 also in Ward 4 that we had the conversation about either making the U or pulling the streets through to Lucy Webb. That was our opening snow conversation this year, as a matter of fact. What are
Yes.
the names?
Condor and Finch? Is it Finch?
Condor and Falcon,
Condor and Finch?
we're looking at. It's Condor and Falcon, I believe.
Or Falcon?
We're looking at the possibility of U-ing those, basically are just going into the field there so that it becomes a through street.
Or pushing
So we're
one
not
out to
going
Lucy
down to the
Webb.
dead end. Right. The school district also wants us to do that, U.
Did you have something?
Thank you, sir. So we've got a couple of, we've had this issue before. We've addressed one because 155th Street's all ours now for maintenance. We've still got Kentucky on the far west side that's half owned by us, half owned by Bell. Do we have a gentleman's agreement with them? And then the same thing as right now, Ward is partially owned on one side by the county. Do we split that right along ownership or geographical lines? I think we got one on the south as well. And then we've got a couple of these little pockets that we surround that are not ours on here. Do we just take care of that, or how does that all work?
Kentucky, it's just kind of informal. Whoever gets there first. Same way with Ward Road from 58 North. I mean, we've got to plow. We've got to get to our segment, and Prairie Lane is that way. School Road, because we've got to go down to 195th Street anyway to access our facilities. So it's kind of whoever gets there first.
You have something else to add?
Once Ward Road is completed, however, the contract calls for us to have 100% maintenance on it. And as Mr. Kraus has been indicating, a lot of it is, every event is unique unto itself, and a lot of gentlemen's agreements out there. You know, a lot of times we'll go out and actually, because the county takes so long to get to it, we'll do the hill there coming down to Hubach Hill Road because it needs to get hit, especially if there is school in session. So we go out there and we do that one. The only given that we never see a modification on is you can count on when they hit the city limits, MoDOT's going to lift their blades on 58 Highway. They are not going to touch our section of 58 Highway. Got to save those blades.
Anyone else? Anybody want to go out and see the snowplow? Sit in the truck? Anybody? Anybody? Everybody looked at it? All right. Well, unless we've got something else under other, we'll move on from the snow plan to other. Does anybody have anything to bring up before we go into executive session? No? Okay. Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much. So if there's nothing else to be discussed tonight in open session, I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that the Raymore City Council move into executive session to discuss litigation matters as authorized by revised Missouri Statute 610.021, subsection 1.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Any further discussion? Oh, we'll go on to the roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Townsend?
Aye.
Councilmember Wills?
Yes.
Councilmember Forster?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye.
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
All right. We're